There's very few things in life, and let alone in football, that many people can agree on. Some examples of those would be the fact that pineapple does belong on pizza, Madrid is the best Champions League team in history, and that Ronaldinho is a player who brings joy to whoever can watch him play. In our current footballing landscape, it's impossible to ignore the fact that the newest players that are rising to the top all tend to feel very robotic. It's getting to the point where it really just feels like that Nike commercial from a few years ago where all the top players just become robots. With that being said, we as football fans that are either already at UNC status or rapidly approaching usually find ourselves looking back at the tapes of players who were able to wow us when they were on the pitch. In steps Ronaldinho into the conversation. We're talking about a guy who would go out onto the pitch and essentially do whatever he wanted to a football and to whatever player was going to try and stop him that week. In his prime, Ronaldinho was literally the best player in the world, a proper representation of Joga Bonito in its prime, and he was able to conquer world football his way and no one could do anything about it. Does anyone remember that Nike advert with Ronaldinho and the golden boots? Man, I was in such awe when I first saw that video on YouTube. I did fall to my knees when I found out it was staged for the commercial. I really couldn't believe it, but that to say, Ronaldinho had so much star power at this point that this video was literally the first ever YouTube video to hit 1 million views. Plain and simple, Ronaldinho was nasty on the field. His prime specifically, while very short, is something that I believe keeps going on as underappreciated as time goes on. With Neymar having come and gone and Vinny Jr. on top of the world, I just wanted to showcase the rise and prime of the man who made that possible for them. But really, how good was Ronaldinho in his prime? Real quick boys, if you're enjoying the video, enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're dropping weekly football videos, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. But with that being said boys, let's take a look into the rise and the prime of Ronaldinho. Well, surprise surprise, Ronaldinho would start his career in the Brazilian league with Grêmio. Well, actually, as his urban legend, Ronaldinho would first make headlines at the age of 13 when he would play a full-time match for Grêmio where his side won 23-0, with Ronaldinho scoring all 23 of those goals. Dinho would make his debut for the Grêmio first team in the 1998 Copa Libertadores, going on to feature in 31 matches, registering 6 goals while displaying a given talent to control football in whichever way he wanted. But it's really 1999 where we saw the rise of Ronaldinho at just 18 years old. At this point, he had become a mainstay in the Grêmio side and he began to increase his output and was able to finish the season with 22 goals in 43 matches for the club. But come on, it's Ronaldinho we're talking about here. We don't even need to talk about stats for the rest of the video for us to know really what type of timing he was on. At just age 18, Ronaldinho was making the Brazilian league and the surrounding competition his playground. Notably, he was even able to get the best of World Cup winning Dunga in the Campeonato Gaucho where Ronaldinho and Grêmio would come out as victors. 1999 would also mark the year where Ronaldinho would make his senior national team debut as he would take part in 2 competitions for La Seleção that summer, taking part in the Copa America and the Confederations Cup. While not a key figure at Copa America, Dinho would come off the bench and provide good moments for his country as Brazil would go on to win the competition. After this tournament, he would then feature in the Confederation Cup where he was more so given the keys to the Brazilian national team. Ronaldinho would absolutely flourish with his new given responsibility as he would score 6 goals, register 7 assists, and displayed countless great performances in their run to the final. Ultimately, they lost to a great Mexican side, but this will and truly solidify that Dinho was not going away anytime soon. It was only going to be a matter of time until this monster went abroad. And despite spending the year 2000 with Grêmio where he would continue to show his dominance in South America, those European knocks eventually came. Although Wenger's Arsenal were interested in Ronaldinho, a move was never able to solidify due to issues with work permits. Yet another player you might not know almost played for Arsenal, and despite weighing his options for what he wanted to do, he'd ultimately signed for Paris Saint-Germain in December of 2000 for 5 million euros, opting to stay at Grêmio until the summer and then moving to Paris. And this was a PSG team a long ways away from the Qatari rule that they're in now, but Dinho was still joining a side with good young players like Anelka, Arteta, and Heinz, and some established guys like JJ Okocha and Pochettino. In the French league, Dinho would be able to adapt himself to football at a higher level and begin to carve out a name for himself amongst the best players in the world. His time in Paris wouldn't get off to the best start as realistically he wasn't given consistent game time and would alternate between starting matches and coming off the bench. In result, he would kind of struggle to find a consistent rhythm when it came to output. Like I said, with Ronaldinho, of course, it's not all about goals and assists because realistically it became clear that he was relentless when it came to causing problems for his defenders. Despite his taller frame, his rapid acceleration paired with his elite dribbling ability made him a problem for anyone squaring up to him. The second half of the season would see him click in terms of output as once he became a starter, he would begin to at least provide more consistently. When all was said and done, Dinho would have a good first go around in Europe considering he was still adjusting to being halfway across the world. He would at least be able to register 13 goals and 7 assists in 40 games. That being said, Dinho's talent alone was good enough enough to get him a spot in the Brazilian national team for the 2002 World Cup. Here, Ronaldinho in a squad that consisted of legendary players like Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Kaká, Juninho, Roberto Carlos, and Cafu was able to steal the show as he would go on to have a monster tournament. 2 goals and 3 assists in this run, paired alongside brilliant performances where he would embarrass the world's best, made it even more clear that soon Ronaldinho would be snatching everyone's chain. Notably, Dinho would be instrumental in all ways when Brazil knocked out England, as he would get an assist and score an iconic free kick in their 2-1 victory. Oh, and he also received a red card this game, so I'm sure somebody hit some crazy parlay this match. All these great performances from Dinho and also this otherworldly Brazilian side would see him come out as a World Cup winner at just about the age of 21. Absolutely phenomenal scenes. The guy was already on a path to crazy success. In his following season for PSG, he would hope to carry on this form, but unfortunately this never really happened. PSG as a whole struggled this season, and Dinho already had some problems with their manager Luis Fernandez, and they kind of just lingered around the entire season. Despite a handful of good performances and even heavily helping PSG make the Coupe de France final, Dinho and the club came up short in many places. Dinho already had the confidence in knowing that he could realistically hang with the best of them, and given that PSG had finished 11th place in Ligue 1, he asked to leave the club as he wanted to be in an environment that would bring him Champions League football. In steps Barcelona. Having been going through a tough period and just electing a new president, Barcelona were aiming to send shockwaves through the footballing world and bring the club back to glory. Club president Laporta was hoping to bring in either one of Henry, Beckham, or Dinho, and when all was said and done, he would secure the signature of at least one of them. After outbidding Man United, Barcelona would sign Ronaldinho in July of 2003 for 30 million euros. Nowadays, 30 million euros gets you absolutely nothing. That is crazy that that's all that Ronaldinho cost. This was a massive move for Ronaldinho as he was bringing a massive aura to Barcelona that they just did not have. In his first season at the club from an individual standpoint, considering what he was just coming off of at PSG, was pretty good. The guy would really announce himself by dribbling past 2 Sevilla players and then smashing a ball in the top corner from 30 yards out to get his first La Liga goal. This should have been an indicator for what was to come in these next couple of years. Dinho would go on to have so many great performances, and it felt like he had just hit a higher level than what he was doing at PSG. In fact, Ronaldinho was so important to the squad this season that when he missed some games due to injury in the middle of the season, the club would fall all the way down to 12th place. When he returned, he would help Barca finish off the season in 2nd place. This is the type of aura that they write about in history books. This guy's acceleration, ball control, ball striking, and eye for pass genuinely felt like you were watching the next coming of Maradona on a football pitch. And pair this with the 22 goals and 12 assists that he got for the club, and at this time this was his best campaign in Europe, at least on paper. And in the following 04-05 season, his 2nd go around with the club, this is where you could really say that Ronaldinho's peak started to kick off, because this season it really felt like there was nothing he could not do on a football pitch. He was so relentless in giving defenses problems that they hardly ever had time to breathe. It was no longer a conversation of when Ronaldinho would hit that upper echelon status, as now there were arguments for Dinho being the best player in the world, and this was backed up by the fact that he would finish 3rd place in the 2004 Ballon d'Or rankings. Oh, and this season he would also notably assist a certain Lionel Messi's first senior Barcelona goal, but more on that guy some other time. Dinho's magical performances, his 13 goals and 17 assists would all help Barcelona secure their first La Liga title in 6 years. Again, this is an unprecedented aura that we're talking about here. 2 seasons at the club and he had already brought them a La Liga title. And as we love to say on the channel, the first time was so nice he had to do it twice. A rocket had well and truly been strapped to the back of Ronaldinho, and the 05-06 season would be the one where he really became the best player in the world. Ethereal levels of football were displayed by Ronaldinho this year. It's not even justice to just say phenomenal or world class. That would be doing him a disservice. This guy was out here ruining careers left, right, and center. This season was truly the peak of Ronaldinho, and there was a feeling that no one really came close to him at this point in time. Dinho would lead Barcelona to a treble, not the treble, as they would secure La Liga, the Supercopa de España, and the Champions League, a trophy that they had not won for 14 years. In this campaign already full of incredible performances, we would see Ronaldinho score 2 goals against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, earning him a standing ovation by the whole stadium, an incredible go-ahead goal against Chelsea in the round of 16 of the Champions League, a goal against Milan at the San Siro in the semi-finals. Ultimately, he would end up with 26 goals and 23 assists in 45 games, securing himself the Ballon d'Or and the UEFA Player of the Year award in the process, establishing himself as the best player in the world. Dinho's time overall at Barcelona to that point in time had been very good, but particularly these last 2 seasons are the biggest reasons for why he is such an icon in world football today. He was able to drag this poor Barcelona side and managed to get them 2 La Ligas and a Champions League all in just 3 seasons, and he did it his way, always playing with a smile on his face as his trickery, pace, and striking ability dominated defenders to try to stop him. This is literally peak Ronaldinho right here. But as the saying goes, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The following 06-07 season, we still got to see somewhat of a high level from Ronaldinho. From a physicality and technical standpoint, he was still delivering for Barcelona on the pitch, but unfortunately the club as a whole struggled more this year, and thus Dino wasn't able to flourish as much as he had just shown. Individually, he would decline from a number standpoint, as his 24 goals and 13 assists in 49 games was a little bit off from last season, and Barcelona would only be able to win the Supercopa de España, which isn't very impressive. You could see that Dino was still great, but for whatever reason this season just felt like a regression. Pair this with the somewhat underwhelming 2006 World Cup, where Brazil would eventually be entirely outclassed by a Zidane-led France, and the writing was on the wall for what was to come. And if 06-07 was a precursor for the fall, 07-08 would truly be the beginning of the end. Having just witnessed a sharp boom into his prime, this season saw him falling at 100 miles an hour as he regressed from multiple standpoints. Largely due to fatigue, Dino would start to miss games throughout the front half of the season, and when he did play, he would still show some of the qualities we came to love him for, but you could tell he had become a bit more sluggish. Unfortunately for Ronaldinho, despite having spent so much time in his career becoming a model for how a footballer should carry himself, this year he had some issues off the pitch. When he wasn't playing and he did have all the time to himself, he would find himself turning to alcohol and partying in his free time. In turn, this would then affect his physical shape and what he was able to do at higher levels on a football pitch. He would end up playing only 26 games this season and registering just 9 goals and 4 assists in all competitions. During the second half of this very season, Dino would suffer an injury that would see him miss the rest of the campaign and ultimately brought a nasty end to his time at the club. Having failed to bring any significant silverware to the team in a very disappointing fashion, and having his off-field issues affect him so much on the pitch and what he was able to provide at an elite level, Barcelona grew tired of the Brazilian's antics and essentially decided that it was time for him to leave the club. So in July of 2008, Ronaldinho would join Italian giants AC Milan for about 22 million euros. A move that, despite Dino's form and problems, was one that provided large levels of aura. There was hope that the Brazilian would be able to recapture the magic he had shown during his peak years with Barcelona, but this unfortunately would not come during his first season. If anything, the problems that had come up for him towards the end of his time with Barcelona got worse at Milan. Dino's party lifestyle would carry on in Italy, and it would continue to affect him physically, his ability on the pitch, and how often he'd even be available for the team. Then coach Carlo Ancelotti would criticize Ronaldinho as he had gotten to a point where his party lifestyle was affecting him so much. This year he wouldn't really be a starter for AC Milan, and thus only managed 10 goals and 6 assists in 36 matches for the club, while also failing to really show the magic that we had become accustomed to. But Dino did have one more good season left in the tank, as the 2009-2010 season saw somewhat of a good return to form. This season, now under new coach Leonardo, Dino began to be used off the left-hand side again and started to cook. It felt like he was once again starting to cause problems for opposing defenders, and although he clearly was no longer the best player in the world, Dino still carried some aura about him. And despite whatever's going on with him, it always felt like he was just one flip of the switch away from embarrassing whoever he was up against. And this is something he really carries around even to this day. He just has some unprecedented aura about him wherever he goes. But it was definitely in display this specific season. He would end this year with 15 goals and 19 assists, which included great performances over 2 legs against United, 2 solid performances against Madrid in the Champions League, taking over in matches against Juventus on 2 different occasions, and generally just a return to the fluid Ronaldinho we had remembered. All this allowing him to capture the top assisting title in Serie A that season. But this would really be the end of peak Ronaldinho as we knew. He would start the 2010-11 season with AC Milan, but things never really clicked. He'd get a handful of goals and assists in the first half of the season, but would continue to miss games due to fitness and injury. The partying lifestyle and the intense demands of the European game had gotten to Dino, and he was just beginning to quickly look worse for wear. After 10 years of playing in Europe, Dino would leave AC Milan in that year's January window and return to Brazil, where he would eventually become somewhat of a journeyman. Despite having the option to potentially return to his boyhood club in Grêmio, he would receive multiple offers from clubs in Brazil. Eventually, he would sign for Flamengo for just 3 million euros, and at the age of just 30, Ronaldinho's level was really maxed at the Brazilian league. He managed to dominate in his first 2 seasons back in Brazil, but this really shouldn't have been a surprise. The guy realistically could have probably gone back to PSG or to some other European club, but he decided to just go back to Brazil. The partying lifestyle had already done too much damage to him, and realistically playing at those really high intense levels would have probably just killed him in the long run. And if anything, that partying lifestyle just continued in Brazil. Brazil. It was probably a lot easier for him in his home country. And just during his first couple seasons back in Brazil, he was a pretty solid player, but he never really stuck at one club. In 2012, he would move to Mineiro, where he would have another good season, but from here, it was just more of a decline. The guy was just in a rapid free fall. As time went on, he just looked more and more like an uncle on the pitch. In 2014, he would move to Querétaro in Mexico, and the reason for moving to Querétaro out of all of the places he could have gone is that he just wanted to go somewhere where he could have fun playing football. So for him, this was just a little bit of an extended vacation. Liga MX is okay, but it's definitely not better than the Brazilian league, so it's another step down in quality for him. Realistically, he was just looking to party and for women. That's all he wanted to do. At this point in his career, he was just all in into that lifestyle. And after Querétaro, he would have one more season at Fluminense in Brazil, where he would move to in 2015. And he would sign an 18-month contract in July of 2015, but by September of that same year, the contract was terminated. Dinho felt that he was in a pretty bad place physically and just realistically was going to be past it and not bring any value to actually being on the pitch for the club. And with that was really the last time we even saw Ronaldinho on a football pitch at that capacity. He would end up officially retiring in 2018 after having reached literally the peak of football, bringing Champions League and La Liga titles to Barcelona, playing on the pitch, embarrassing defenders, always having a smile on his face. Joga bonito. Ronaldinho, in just a span of 4 to 5 years, went from being on top of the world to just being a journeyman looking to find his way in Brazil. It's just a shame how his career ended up panning out. Realistically though, those 2-3 years where he was at the height of his powers is a time frame that just feels untouchable. Ronaldinho really was setting the pace in the early 2000s, and with that, we have the legacy of a player that will live on forever.